Hello and welcome to Hammer Down Woodworking. My name is Tracy Maxfield, and today has turned out to be a pretty good day in the shop. The reason why is that we have a new jig today. Most jigs woodworkers use are made kind of on the fly. They're made as they're needed. This one was purchased and it's supposed to have a lot of bells and whistles. And we're going to invite you along as we do the unpackaging and setup, and also the use of, and then afterward we'll do a review as to what we think about the tool. Alright, and here is that jig. It's a Porter cable dovetail jig. It's a model 4216. It's supposed to have everything that you need in the box right here. I don't know if you can see that on camera or not, but a list of the contents. It's supposed to have templates in it that will do half blind dovetails, sliding dovetails, through dovetail joints, and also box joint template. Should have the router bits, the guides, the whole 9 yards in it. We're going to open that up and see what's inside. And this jig is actually designed to bolt down, which I don't want to bolt this thing permanently to my workbench, but it's made to bolt down to a table or the workbench. And what I've done, just to keep from knocking it off and bending it, destroying it right out of the box, is put a couple of squeeze clamps or speed clamps on the side of it to hold it down to the table to where I won't bump it and knock it off. Also in the box, these are the guide bushings. You get a T-style Allen wrench, and also your bits, your router bits come with this. That's a pattern bit, 1/2 inch shank. And this one right here should be a dovetail bit. It is 1/2 inch shank. And we'll leave those in there for right now. We don't want to knock any of the carbide off of them. And there is also one more package that comes with this, and we'll have to go through the manual and figure it all out. I'm new to this jig also. These are the guide bushings for these bits. It should be quarter inch pattern bit. And this should be a 1/4 inch dovetail bit. And it is. And we'll put those back in those containers for right now. And I will have to go through the manual and see where and why these brackets are used. They may just bolt to the top of one of the spare templates, I don't know, but that's what we have so far. And that's all the contents of the box. And we'll figure this out and be right back. Okay, here's what we have. Everything completely unpackaged. Have 3 templates for half blind dovetails, box joints, and through dovetails. And of course we have the jig itself. It came with a T-style Allen wrench, also a smaller Allen wrench. This Allen wrench fits these bolts, these screws that hold these templates down to the top of these brackets, and that's what the extra brackets was for too. The way they package it, this bracket here in the middle didn't have these, or this template didn't have these brackets fastened to it for packaging, so I've put those on. And each one also comes with a depth gauge, that little screw right here on the side, and that lets you set your router bit height once you get that set, and each one has one on it. Of course, this jig here has, or this template has one, and also this one has one, and that's just to set the router bit height. Each template has a, if you can see that, I don't know if you can see that or not, you can see it pretty good right here, but it's notched all the way across every single one. That is to line your pieces, your wood up by. This one has two, and this one has two. It also came with these two extra brackets, and these right here are for your offset of your boards. When that template, of course this one's made for half line, it won't matter on it, but these are the same thing as these that are already mounted on here, just different color. And what they do is you can take this one off, put this one on, and you can see the only difference, the bottom is the same, but the top of it, of this gray one, let me move it so you can see it, it is wider for a different offset of your material. When you slide one board under here, bring it up to that line that's on the template that I was pointing out just a second ago, it will go all the way against this, and that stops it and lines it up. So when you turn the template around, whatever's cut into this will match the board that goes up under this clamp, and you're actually cutting for half blinds, you're cutting into both pieces, cutting both of them at the same time. And this side is the stop for the board that you're putting through here, the one that will have your dovetails on it. But anyway, that's that, and the Allen wrenches. And you have 4 bits that come with it. I'm not going to go through the trouble of opening these back up. We showed them a minute ago. But you've got 2 that have 1/2 inch shaft, dovetail and a pattern, and you got 2 that are 1/4 inch shaft that are dovetail and a pattern. And these guide bushings, you notice you've got 2 1/4 inch guide bushings, one's for the pattern bit, one's for the dovetail, and same thing with a 1/2 inch shaft. And I'll show you what those do. Okay, I've taken my router base, this is my plunge base, got the router out of it. This is one that has the template on it, which I'll have to check and make sure that this is centered, because this is an awful small hole, and if this is not centered with the collet on the router, this is not going to work. The bit will, when you lower it down, will go into the side of it. So I've got to check this and make sure that this is centered. And these come apart and that goes up in there like that, and tighten that down on the inside, and then your bit will plunge up against this, will plunge through this hole. And the way that that works, all these are the same, just different sizes, but the way that that works, flip that cylinder back out of the way. This is all set and your piece of wood is in there. This right here is on the bottom of your router. That will ride along your pattern allowing your bit to cut the pattern and not cut into the template itself. And now the only things left to do is mill up some lumber, which will not video that. You've seen lumber being milled before. But I'm going to mill up a couple pieces of lumber, a couple pieces of wood, and try cutting some dovetails in it and see how that works. Okay, I've got this all set up, and I've milled down one board, then I just cut it in half. And the way that this works, this is for a half blind dovetail. You put your first board, which is going to be the one that has the dovetails on it. The bed is actually going to cut through the top of this and make a recessed dovetail recess back in the second board. But you bring this up level with this board. You want that smooth across there. That way your joint fits good and tight. And you clamp that down. You also, the stop, these pieces right here that I was talking about earlier, you want to make sure this board is all the way to this side against this stop. This front one meets up right here. And then you can, when you put it in there, kind of split the pin, let an equal amount hang off on this side as same as this side, and then you slide this stop against that board, and that gives you repeat cuts. Tighten it down with that T-style Allen wrench that come with the jig. This board will slide in from the back and meet the opposing side, which is offset. You can see the offset in this one. That one has like a 1/4 inch offset. This one has like a 1/2 inch offset. And you meet that one up against that and clamp it down. You got both boards in there secure. They're smooth across the top. These are set at 3/4 inch. This piece right here has that depth stop for your router bit. Just set your plunger base on that. Put this guide bearing right into that slot. Plunge it down till your bit hits the top of this set. Now if it's not, you'll have to check it and make sure that it's set. I don't know exactly what the right measurement is, but if you want that a little deeper, I would assume that you can lower that down and make that go in deeper, but play with that some and learn about that. This is all still new to me also. But anyway, these are lined up in your router bit. You want to first make a climb cut across the face of this board, going from right to left, and then you'll go back in here, and that gives you your offset, and then just come around left to right, cutting that pattern out. And when you get over here, this side of the board, because this offset, has no support, and I would assume that a piece of wood, piece of board, the same thickness as the stock you're using for your drawers or whatever you're making out of this, you will need a scrap piece just to slide in there to butt up against this front board to support that for tear out, because that looks to me like that's going to tear that out. We will soon see. And this is what this looks like in the jig, the pattern that it cuts out. I'll take these two boards out and show you how those fit together, and we'll see if we're done all right or not. But now I was correct on this side. You can see where that has kind of blown that out just a little bit. But this is scrap and test, just to test with, just some scrap pine, which is real soft anyway. But I would say that if we put a backer board in here and butt it up against that, and maybe even another piece up this way against the side wouldn't hurt none either, just some scrap material that bit will have some help from the outside of that corner to sever those fibers before it just breaks it off or blows it out. And there's what they will look like. They go together. And there's a half-blind dovetail. And this would be your drawer side, and this would be your drawer front or drawer back. That way your dovetails will show. Now these, I'm going to have to work with this and figure it out. I'll not do that on camera because I assume it's going to take a little while. But now these are not fitting exactly like I want them. It's just a little bit proud. You can see my fingernail tearing some of that edge off of that where they're sticking out. Of course, you could sand that down, but if you notice right in here, there's a little bit of gap and almost a little bit of gap right there. The way you seal these up with normal, and I'm assuming this jig will work the same way too, but your blade height will take care of that, and the position of the template should take care of this. So we'll do some adjustments and try it again. Alright, here's where we're at on this jig. I will give it a thumbs up, and here's why. It comes with 3 templates, and with each one of those you will have to adjust and adjust and adjust. The only downfall that I see to this jig, and I don't know if you can see that, but this groove on this template that you line up with the edge of your boards, it's kind of wide. The seam between your boards is a lot narrow than that, and it's hard to get that adjusted exact. It does cut very good dovetails. I have cut several. I went off camera and it's been several days, but since I first opened this up and started messing with it, but it does cut very good dovetails. It does take a lot of adjusting. So whenever you mill your lumber for your drawers or box or whatever you're making, you're going to put dovetails on. Mill you up some extra. If you have to mill it out of some cheaper lumber, maybe even some scrap plywood that you've got around, or some pine boards or something cheaper, because you will go through a lot tweaking this. And to my understanding, these depth gauges on the ends of these are supposed to be preset from the factory to set your router bit depth. And there's some of them that is close, and there's some of them that are not close. So do not rely upon that being set from the factory to use, because mine wasn't. You may get one out of the box that is spot on. This one wasn't. I went through quite a bit of scrap, which that's fine. Needed the practice anyway. But went through quite a bit of scrap before I ever got that set right. And another thing that you will need to do is to make very sure that your template, your router bottom, is centered on your collet, on your bit. And I'm going to try to hold the camera and show you this at the same time. When you get your alignment done for your template, you will start out cutting your if you're like me anyway, you'll start out cutting your dovetails. And you'll cut your dovetails, and then when you get done with all your dovetails, you'll take this out and flip this around to the pin side to cut your pins. When you pull this out, it will spin this adjustment. When you get this little line right here on this, I don't know if you can see that or not, right there, you may be able to see it. That line goes all the way through. And on this side you've actually got two, but you get that line set up where your board comes up here and your other board comes in from this angle, and that's where they meet. That's where you will line that line up. And when you loosen these up and you pull that out, they will actually spin that. So what I've found that you need to do is you've got one on each side, is when you've got this set, your jig is in there and everything's coming out well, give that thing several flips. Back that way off. Let's put the template back in so you can see this. Back that way off, and that way you're not just pulling straight up. Pull that, slide that straight out against this one to where you have it completely off of those on both sides. See that brass bushing in there? Pull this template forward, that way when you come up it's not even touching those, and then they are set perfectly. And you can turn that around, and when you put it back in, put it in back here, and then slide it back against them. That way those do not move. But I'm fixing to show you the type of dovetails that this machine will make. I done through dovetails. I'm working on a box and wanted to make some dovetails for the drawers. I was cutting the dovetails by hand, but this is I'm making the drawers out of cedar board, and everybody knows how soft cedar and pine and all that is. It's hard to cut perfect dovetails in cedar. It's stringy. It wants to just shave right off, and it's a mess. But I did cut those on this jig, and it did work well. Like I said, read your book and mill you up several practice pieces. These are some of the dovetails that this jig was producing when I finally got everything set up. And this material here is a 1/2 inch thick. That's how thick the stock is that I was using for my actual drawers, and that's what I wanted to practice on. And they turned out real well. They fit up nice and snug. If anything, they were still just a little bit on the snug side. By the time you put glue in them, they were pretty tight, but I didn't have any, and this was pine. I didn't have anything to break out. I did push these together by hand, and then when they were almost seated, I did tap them with using a caul and a mallet, but they did seat up real well. But now everything does have to be aligned. You have to mess with it, fool with it till you get it lined up, get the jig part lined up, and you will have to make sure that your router bit is centered in that guide, which means your bottom base plate of your router will have to be centered. If it's not centered, you will not cut dovetails that will work with this jig or any jig. I had actually lost my centering jig that you use to center the base plate on the bottom of the router. And what I done was found a screwdriver that would fit the guide bushing. I put the good guide bushing in the bottom of the base, loosened that base up, plunged it all the way down, and then run that screwdriver through the guide bushing into the collet and tightened everything back down, and that worked fine. And this is the dovetails I got by lining that up like that. It wasn't much off, but it was a little bit off before I lined it up, and it worked great, worked fine. Anyway, that's all I have on this jig. I do give it a thumbs up. It does cut good dovetails. You just have, when you go into it knowing you're going to have to do a lot of adjusting to ever get it to work right. But when you do get it set up, it will produce you some good dovetails. It's Tracy Maxfield. Thanks for joining the shop today. Thanks for watching.